We are live.
Good afternoon. This is the meeting of the North Carolina Professional Educator Preparation and Standards Commission. Ms. Edwards, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sorry, I can't find my unmute button. There we go. Okay, Dr. Blanton,
Present.
Dr. Bullock,
Present.
Ms. Wisner, Dr. Fleming,
Present.
Ms. Edwards, present. Ms. Patton, Dr. Locklear, Dr. Groves Price,
Present.
Mr. Justice,
Present.
Ms. Hoskins,
Present.
Dr. Weddington,
Present.
Dr. Griffin,
Present.
Mr. Smith, Ms. Jenkins, Dr. Winter,
Present.
Mr. Probst,
Present.
and Dr. Stein.
Present.
1, 2, 4, 6. Believe we have quorum.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome commission members, advisors, staff, online visitors, and online listeners to the August 13, 2026 monthly meeting of the North Carolina Professional Educator Preparation and Standards Commission. This Standards Commission develops and recommends to the State Board of Education rules related to all aspects of educator preparation, licensure, continuing education, and professional standards of North Carolina educators. I am Ann Bullock, Chair of the Professional Educator Preparation and Standards Commission, and I call this meeting to order. Our agenda and materials are available online through the DPI website, www.ncpublicschools.org, on the quote SBE meetings unquote link. The meeting is also audio streamed through a link located at the bottom of the eBoard agenda. I will now read the ethics statement that is required of us. Commission members are reminded that it is our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts of interest as we handle the work of the commission. Does any member of the commission know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before us at this meeting? If so, please state them for the record. If during the course of the meeting you become aware of an actual or apparent conflict of interest, please bring this matter to the attention of the vice chair. It will then be your duty to abstain from participating in discussion on the matter and from voting on the matter. Commission members, you have had an opportunity to review the proposed agenda for today's meeting. Do I have a motion to approve this agenda for the August 13, 2026 meeting?
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim. Any further discussion on the agenda? Ms. Edwards will call for the vote for the approval of the agenda.
Dr. Blanton,
Approved.
Dr. Bullock,
Approve.
Dr. Fleming,
Approved.
Ms. Edwards, approve. Dr. Groves Price,
Approve.
Mr. Justice,
Approved.
Ms. Hoskins,
Approve.
Dr. Weddington,
Approve.
Dr. Griffin,
Approve.
Dr. Winter,
Approve.
Mr. Probst,
Approve.
and Dr. Stein.
Approved.
The motion carries. And who was the second? It blurred out.
Dr. Winter.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Oh, well then who was the first?
Dr. Stein.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yes. All right, the agenda is approved. The minutes from our previous commission meeting on May 4th, 2026 has been prepared and made available to you. Do I have a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Blair.
Second.
Thank you, Bill. Any further discussion on the minutes or corrections? Ms. Edwards, could we please have the roll call for the approval of the minutes from May 14th, 2026?
Dr. Blanton,
Approve.
Dr. Bullock,
Approve.
Dr. Fleming,
Approve.
Ms. Edwards, approve. Dr. Groves Price,
Approve.
Mr. Justice,
Approve.
Ms. Hopkins,
Approve.
Dr. Weddington,
Approve.
Dr. Griffin,
Approve.
Dr. Winter,
Approve.
Mr. Probst,
Approve.
Dr. Stein.
Approved.
The motion carries.
Thank you. The minutes have been approved. The link for the June and July 2026 State Board of Education meetings were sent to you prior to this meeting. We did not send any items to the State Board in August. The recordings are marked at the presentations for the Educator Excellence Committee, formerly named the Educator Standards and Practices, ES&P Committee, which is the committee that handles the work of Pepsi. If anyone has questions, please follow up with Dr. Evans, and we will follow up with your as a discussion item in the September Pepsi meeting. Okay, so we've had some exciting things happening over the summer. So our first item is an update from the legislative team at DPI, Mr. Jeff Coltrane and Miss Lizzie Yelverton. I believe Lizzie, are you doing it?
I am. Can everyone
Hi,
hear me?
very good.
All right, great. So thank you so much for having me today. Excuse me. So I'm Lizzie Yelverton. I am the legislative liaison for the Department of Public Instruction, and my colleague Jeff Coltrane and I, as well as Ann Murtha, who compiles our legislative newsletter each week, which I'm just going to go ahead and plug. You guys should sign up for that if you haven't already, because we do provide weekly updates if there's anything happening at the legislature. We are the government affairs team, and today I'm going to provide a quick update. I did just want to point out that this version of the PowerPoint is slightly different than the one that is posted on the meeting agenda website. That one was from July 31st, but as of this Monday, there's actually been some additional updates, some new bills that have been signed into law. So I just didn't want you all to get a little confused if you're trying to follow along with the one that's on the agenda website. So we can go to the next slide. So as most of you have probably heard, we do have a new state budget. It's been and I'm seeing a note about an updated copy, and I believe that can definitely get sent out. As I mentioned, we do have a new state budget. It was signed into law a little over a month ago. The budget is going through the certification process right now, so that we can actually receive the funds to be sent to the districts. I did want to point out the effective date for most of the budget is July 1st, 2026, with it being passed into law on the 7th. That makes it slightly retroactive, but there are a few provisions where it did provide otherwise a different effective date. So I will try to note when that is the case. Another recent update is regarding the legislative schedule. We are technically still in the 2026 short session, but this is going to be another session that seems to at least could last for the rest of the year. So they have already passed an adjournment resolution, basically having at least 2 days a month from now until the end of the year as placeholders in which they can come back and reconsider a few bills, make some adjustments to the budget if needed. But again, these are placeholders. It's not guaranteed that they'll return to Raleigh, but I would assume sometime between now and the end of the year, they will return. It just might not be every single month as they've indicated. And Kim is doing a great job because I threw this updated version at her very last minute. So take that out on me for just now getting it to y'all. But again, I appreciate your patience with all the updates. Just a quick overview of the salaries. As you may have heard, there is an 8% average raise for teachers. I did want to emphasize average because unfortunately a lot of our veteran teachers, those with more experience, are not going to be receiving an 8% raise. It'll be less than that, with most of the biggest raises really concentrated at the beginning of the pay scale to encourage recruitment and that sort of thing. There is also a provision for bonuses. So if you are a teacher with more experience, you'll receive a slightly higher bonus, a $1,000 bonus versus a $500 bonus for less experienced teachers. There is a provision in the budget that says you have to be employed as of October 1st to qualify for these bonuses. So it doesn't exactly state when those bonuses will be paid out, but I would assume most districts will wait until at least October 1st, so they're not having to claw back any funding or anything like that. You can see for other staff and state employees, I won't get into all of that. They also slightly changed the state supplemental funds for teacher compensation. Also continuing the Opportunity Scholarship Program, as well as agreeing to some personal income tax rates. We included the Opportunity Scholarship and personal income tax rates because I think those are, other than salaries and bonuses, two of the biggest K-12 education items, or at least the income tax rates will affect how much funding we're able to generate eventually. Specifically for this group, I wanted to highlight some of the modifications surrounding educator license and licensure. So we did request some of these provisions. The first one was not one that we requested. So we are continuing to look into this one and figure out how this will best be implemented. But there was a provision in the budget that expanded the K-6 elementary teaching license to include grades 7 through 8. And that's pretty much the entire, that entire section. It says expanding the elementary teaching license. So we would assume that this is just, an add-on to elementary teaching license, that it wouldn't affect the separate license for middle school grades, but did just want to let you all know we're still working through this one, but wanted to definitely highlight that for y'all. Another modification was one that we had requested that removes the requirement for beginning teachers to attempt their licensure exam in their first year of licensure. So as you all know, you typically have 3 years to successfully pass those licensure exams. And so this change would just prevent the situation where a candidate maybe didn't attempt that licensure exam their first year, but they were successful their second or third year. But, according to the strict, words in the statute, we wouldn't be able to provide them with that license. So got rid of that requirement. We also eliminated the Praxis Core. I say we, the legislature, with some advocacy on our part, remove the Praxis Core as a requirement for EPP admissions. So I'm just going to repeat, this is just for EPP admissions. It is not the licensure exams that you would take after you've been admitted to an EPP. So this is really just, the LSAT for law school, the medical exam to get into medical school. We're removing that Praxis Core for EPP admissions. This next one I definitely wanted to highlight. This is streamlined reciprocity for out-of-state teachers. So before the budget was passed, it required us to, or the state board was allowed to accept licenses from states with substantially similar requirements. So the budget actually removed that language that says substantially similar. And so now any teacher that has a clear license from another state with 3 years of teaching experience and they're in good standing in that other state, the state board is required to grant them a CPL. And what that means is essentially they no longer have to provide evidence of their test scores, which we know has been an issue, especially for teachers that might have been teaching for 20, 30 years coming from another state, and they can't find their license exam scores from 20 years ago. This is streamlining that by removing the requirement for them to have to provide those license exam scores. And then lastly, there is a provision in there that requires the state board to convert a limited license to a CPL if the teacher has a positive average growth score for 2 of the 3 most recent years. And so this was not one of our requests, but I did just want to include that with our kitchen sink here of educator licensure modifications in the state budget. Some other budget items of note, it did eliminate the Teach and See initiative, which is, this program that is sort of a guide for exploring and teaching careers and licensure pathways. And so it did eliminate that initiative. Excuse me. And it also established a Teach Ready NC teacher apprenticeship program using the previous teacher apprenticeship program funds. But it did also grandfather in existing teacher apprenticeship programs so that we will continue to fund them and support them until those cohorts have graduated. Or until that they finish that program. Sorry. And then finally on this last bullet, it does also clarify the requirements for the Masters of School Administration internship program stipends. So previously DPI was required to provide up to 10 months of the internship stipend. And so the budget actually clarified those requirements so that we DPI has to provide those internship stipends for a full 10 months. And so we would have to, prioritize participation if needed, but just clarifying, we wouldn't be able to provide only like 3 months out of the whole 10 months. It would be for the full 10 months. So this is the part that is really new. It's all pretty new, but this is especially new because this was signed into law earlier this week. And this is the Budget Technical Corrections Part 2. So they actually passed a Budget Technical Corrections Part 1 at the same time they passed the budget, which was interesting, but just wanted to let you all know that this also recently became law. It does adjust the effective date for that Teach Ready NC program to move it up to the 26-27 school year. And so you can see they've updated some of those dates there as well. And then this last bullet, there was a provision in here that I wanted to include, even though I don't have a lot of background on it or why it was included, but it seems pretty pertinent to this group. So it specifies the procedure for following the removal of an EPP from the Teaching Fellows Program. So you can see the criteria that it has included there. And I know I'm flying through all of this, but I just wanted to be respectful of the time allotted. But as always, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer those, or you can reach out to me via email. But jumping back in, there is this last provision in the new law, the Budget Technical Corrections Part 2, that I specifically wanted to mention, which removes the deadline for EPP rule adoption for the accountability proposal. So, excuse me. It requires the state board, in consultation with DPI, the UNC system, community colleges, NC independent colleges and universities, to report to the Joint Legislative Education Oversight Committee by October 15th, 2026, on recommendations for an EPP accountability model, including any necessary changes to that law that would be required for implementation. And so essentially, we are just taking the model that Pepsi that you all have already created, and right now we are preparing that report in consultation with the partners listed above, that we are planning to submit to the General Assembly. So no, at this point we don't expect any substantive changes before we submit this report. But did just want to note that it has officially removed that deadline for us to implement rules regarding EPP accountability, just to give us all a little bit more time and a little bit less pressure to work through the final accountability model. And I did want to note that this provision was also included in a separate bill, which also became law earlier this week, Senate Bill 445, the Regulatory Reform Act. And so we kind of joke, a provision so nice, they included it twice. So it's actually in two different laws, but it's the same provision. And then just a few other education-related laws, not specific to licensure, but just our workforce in general, because we, are continuing to get budget-related questions, which actually neither of these are related to the budget. Senate Bill 227, the Eliminating DEI in Public Education. This was a previous vetoed bill, but that has recently become law in late June. And then lastly, the Public Workforce Modernization Act. This is a pretty lengthy bill, but specifically for state employees, I wanted to point out that it does expand paid parental leave for state employees. So it was previously up to 8 weeks for any parent who gives birth and up to 4 weeks for any other qualifying event. So now it has extended that to up to 12 weeks for any employee who becomes a parent. And of course, there's a provision in there requiring the local boards to adopt parental leave policies that are substantially similar to the bill. And then that is all I have for you all today. Any questions or anything I can look into for anyone? Again, I apologize. I know that was a very quick run through.
Lizzie, this is Ann. I had a question about the removal of a program from the teaching fellows. Do you know if there's criteria somewhere else that states why a program would be removed? Or that are they asked to be, I'm just trying to figure this out. Are they asked to create a procedure if they wanted to remove someone, or?
I'm not quite sure about
Okay.
this provision, to be honest. It was kind of a surprise provision. Like, I'm not still unsure as to where it originated, but I can definitely look into that and see what I can find.
Okay, great. I'm taking a picture of it myself. All right. All right, thank you.
Lizzie, I have a question also. This is Madison Edwards. In regards to the expanding the elementary license to include like 7th and 8th grade, would that also in reverse include elementary level on a middle school license that already exists?
So I think that that is probably a legal interpretation question, so I don't want to get myself in trouble here.
Right.
But, you know, just according to like a strict reading of that provision, it says specifically that it is expanding elementary licenses. And so I typically don't assume or infer anything, you know, unless it specifically states it. So it's my understanding that we're just kind of leaving middle school licenses alone, but I can probably, or I can definitely reach out and confirm that.
Right, that makes sense. I was just wondering because we like require our instructional coaches in our county to have the license for the grade band that they would be coaching. And so a lot of times we have, you know, qualified instructional coaches that maybe are sixth grade or middle school certified, you know, that are interested in elementary positions, but because they don't have that license, they don't technically meet those county requirements. So I was just wondering in that sense if it would go both ways, but that makes sense based on the wording.
Lizzie, this Paola, I have a question about the same item. When you were talking about it, it may have been unintentionally, you said they would have an add-on for 7th and 8th grade. An add-on means like I already have an out license, I'll add on. Or is it that there will be a new license that is K-8? Or is it a K-6 with an add-on for 7, 8?
That is a really good question, and I really appreciate you bringing that up because you are correct that that is, you know, a certain term of art, I'd say, within the licensure field. So I am going to refer to one of our licensure experts on how that is going to be interpreted. I typically just follow the legislation and provide tweaks if needed, but that's going to be, I think, determined by our licensure team. And I know that's a non-answer, so probably not helpful for
No,
you.
thank you.
Yeah.
So,
Anything?
sorry, just a quick follow-up. So Dr. Tomberlin may want to add some additional information. I'll just say that with respect to this, there are a number of nuances that are being contemplated. And one real big piece of this will be whether or not there is an intention to establish a new license or whether, as Dr. Stein just suggested, whether there is perhaps an opportunity for an add-on. There's no real interpretation that has been identified at this point, but conversations are absolutely happening. And as you can all imagine, no, I don't have to tell you, but I'll feel better having said it. If we're talking about a separate license, there are a lot of pieces to that puzzle. And so once we have more clarity, then we'll be better able to kind of navigate those waters.
Thank you.
And thank you for the
Yeah,
question.
If I may, Lizzie, this is
Lizzie.
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry, Ryan, go
go
ahead.
ahead, Dr. Tomlin.
So I can articulate what we've shared to our HR directors and I think with the EPP folks that until the board policies are fleshed out, we're encouraging the LEAs to consult with their board attorneys that this law is out there and what they do in terms of allowing K-6 folks to teach in 7th and 8th grade is for them and their board attorneys to suss out in advance of what policy decisions will arise out of from the State Board of Education.
And I was just going to add on to that. I've been discussing this with Dr. Tomberlin and the licensure folks. The way this particular provision is written, it's not self-executing. The state board has to adopt a rule and a policy to implement that before it can be effectuated. And so I believe that is going to be part of a series of recommended rule changes that the licensure staff is going to be presenting to you all in the coming months, along with some of the other things that Ms. Yelverton has discussed today.
Thank you.
Ryan and Tom, this is Bill. If you had a person that was K6 currently and working in 7th and 8th grade, would they be considered out of field?
So, let me clarify your question, Dr. Griffin. So when you say out of field, there's federal reporting that says, are they licensed in that field, which has absolutely no real impact or consequence. My initial reaction to that would be, yeah, probably we would define them as out of field initially. But I think maybe what you're getting at is, would it trigger an audit exception?
Yes. So for payroll
Yeah.
purposes, would that flow through DPI as that person not being licensed in that area
That's right.
for payroll purposes?
Yes, and so I do have on my agenda to talk with finance about the kind of the provision and how they're looking at that from a payroll or an audit exception situation. They're aware of this provision as well, so I just need to connect with them and make sure that everybody's on the same page. But my sense is it would not trigger an audit exception, but we'll get clarification on that as we move forward, because that's really that's the big crux of the whole question. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
I would just say again, I mean, this is also contingent upon the state board defining the parameters of this through policy. The language of the legislation is written in a way that it's not effective until the state board adopts a rule and policy to implement that.
This is Kim. Thanks, Ryan. That's actually really helpful, and it gives us something when we're talking to our colleagues about it. And, I just think from the EPP perspective, there was a flurry of conversation and worry this summer because, of course, when we're thinking about that elementary licensure expansion, we're talking about some basic and broad things like making sure our candidates are prepared from a curricular standpoint and thinking about development. But there are major implications when it comes to content knowledge and the content courses they take that they would be woefully unprepared based on what they do now in comparison to what the middle grades licensure candidates do, which is basically 2 or 3 courses short of an entire degree in field. And so there's lots of stress and anxiety around what will come, but at least, I think your comments are well made, and that's helpful and something that we can say to sort of get people to think, okay, let's follow along with what's happening with the board. But I just bring that up. I hope that's helpful in conversations. I hope people are really thinking about that content piece. And then we're really trying to tamp down rumors right now. Like, no one said to anyone that I know of that we're trying to get rid of middle grades licensure. It doesn't say that in the law. It's about the expansion. So just trying to nip that in the bud where we can.
Great. Ryan, is there anything else that you want to say in terms of the practical logistics of all this? You've mentioned the rules and all that, but I just want to make sure you've had a chance to say anything you think would be helpful for our group.
Sure. Well, I mean, as you all know, we just recently completed a pretty substantial rewrite of the licensure rules as part of the 10-year review process as required under the Administrative Procedure Act. And as I was telling our licensure staff this morning, no good deed goes unpunished because now the legislature is going to make us change a bunch of stuff again. And so I've been having some preliminary conversations with the licensure staff about how to initiate a rule amendment process. I know there was some discussion in previous meetings about trying to have this be done on a more annual basis from academic year to academic year. But I think based on some of these legislative changes and the need to be responsive to that, we're working with them to figure out how to draft recommended rule amendments based on the various legislative changes that have happened here. And so I'm working with them on that so that they can bring those to you all for an initial review. At the risk of getting ahead of myself, I think the goal is to try to have a draft in front of this group at its September meeting so that we can get that process moving along. Obviously we understand the desire for time to have a thorough process, but trying to balance that against being able to be responsive to the legislative requirements. And so at this point, I think we're, even if we start this process next month, I think we're looking at early to mid next spring at the earliest, just to be able to get it through the entire rulemaking process. And so trying to balance expediency with the desire to make sure that these rules are well written from the get-go. And so again, I'm working with the staff on that to try to make sure that the recommended rule changes that they bring you all are thorough and well thought out, but obviously leaving open room for y'all's feedback and input into the process. Hopefully it will be less daunting of a task than the last go around, because this will be discrete amendments as opposed to kind of rewriting what everyone is used to. So that is what we're looking at in terms of getting this in front of this group. And hopefully now that you all have had some experience with a very robust version of that process, that we're hoping that will go well and make sure everyone gets a chance to weigh in with their feedback. So that's what I'm expecting in terms of a timeline moving forward. And any of my colleagues want to add anything that I might have missed?
Thank you. I think that was super helpful. Any questions for Lizzie? We still have Lizzie on the hook here, and or Mr. Collins from anyone? Yeah, I know we are. Thank you, Lizzie, so much. This is super helpful. And thank you, Ryan. Also, this is also very helpful, especially for you to keep us in line of what's coming down the pike. I think the rules process is such a new process that we see these things go into law and we're all like, okay, what's going to happen tomorrow? And for some of these, that's just not going to be as quick as we would like. So, or not like, maybe the K-8, I'm thinking a slow pace might be a real good one. So, because it's going to be a lot of work for the programs. Great thing maybe for schools, but a lot of work for the programs. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. All right, we'll move forward. So next is a policy amendment to TCED 009, which has to do with the famous Praxis Core, which I'm very excited for this to be presented. This is one thing that I want to thank the DPI staff for helping us push forward, because there's been a lot of questions about getting this into practice and into policy. So I believe we have Dr. Syberg.
Hey there, I was just tag teaming in here because I'm in the same room with Dr. Tomerlin.
He's like a talking head behind you. It works out really well.
That's right. He's the blurry guy in the back there. So this has to do with session law, piece of session law 2026-41, section 7.10, parentheses A. And that's where they removed the requirement of the Praxis Core. And as you mentioned earlier, we were trying to get this, because it's fairly succinct and fairly stable and very clear from the law. We were trying to get this into policy as quick as possible. It resides in TCED 009. So what you see in front of you here is the original TCED 009. And we've struck virtually all of it. This has to do with minimum admission requirements into ed prep programs. And essentially all of section 1 had to do with passing Praxis Core. So subsection A, B, C, and D all were uniformly struck. And then in the second section, we have to retain the second section. It will now be section 1, but that has to do with the calculation of the grade point average. And you'll see in here the way the language is crafted. We've done a couple of small changes just to tighten up the language a little bit. But essentially, this is leaving the calculation of the GPA directly in the hands of the EPPs. And you can see that where we struck in subsection A, subsection 2, where we had in there originally that we'll create a list of sample evidences and documentation to guide. we've struck that as well. Again, leaving it wholly in the hands of the EPP to determine what 18 semester hours on any candidate's transcripts would satisfy the content areas relevant to the license area that they're seeking. So again, most of this is just a striking of information related to Praxis Core and some tightening of the language here towards the bottom, and also maintaining the GPA requirements. Any questions about that?
Any questions for Dr. Seibert? Okay. I'd like to see if we could call for a motion to move this forward to the state board.
So moved, Chris.
All right.
Second, Connie.
Fleming.
Okay. I have Chris, and then I heard Aaron, and then someone else actually spoke in the background. I'm not sure who it was.
It was Connie.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. All right, we have a motion in 2 seconds, which is perfect for this. Is there any discussion on this? All right, hearing none, I would ask Ms. Edwards that we call for the vote.
Dr. Blanton,
Approve.
Dr. Bullock,
Approve.
Dr. Fleming,
Approved.
Ms. Edwards, approve. Dr. Locklear,
Approve.
Dr. Groves Price, Mr. Kaysen, I'm sorry, Mr. Justice,
Approved.
Ms. Hoskins,
Approve.
Dr. Weddington,
Approved.
Dr. Griffin,
Approve.
Dr. Winter,
Approved.
Mr. Probst,
Approved.
and Dr. Stein.
Approved.
The motion carries.
I just like to take a pause that this is a big deal. And even though we don't get to make the final vote on this, let's go to the state board, that I'd like to congratulate Pepsi on getting this on the table as well. So this is going to be great for, and hopefully will open up the doors for some candidates to become teachers through traditional paths that haven't been able to pass the Praxis Core. So thank you all. All right, let's move forward. Okay. So lastly, but not leastly, we have an update recommendation from the licensure subcommittee that we sent off to discuss music content assessments. So they have learned a lot, I believe, in their subcommittee about this area. And so the chair of the licensure subcommittee, Alexandra Hoskins, will provide the update / recommendation.
So good afternoon, everyone. The licensure subcommittee has met several times and has conducted its due diligence and is pleased to be able to bring its recommendation to you today. So I want to make sure that I acknowledge the subcommittee members. So thank you for the service of Dr. Groves Price, Mr. Justice, Ms. Patton, Mr. Probst, and Ms. Ruiz for their service on the subcommittee and for doing their work to make sure that we did what we were asked to do. I also want to acknowledge that we have Mr. Brandon Rader with us today from DPI, who is the music specialist for the state, who was instrumental in this process. And I use that word, haha, this is the music test, and he was instrumental in making sure that we had the right folks at the table and having the right conversations. So the charge was to review the Praxis Music Test 5114, which is the current test used to assess content knowledge for K-12 music education. Our charge was to determine if that test is in fact the right test or the best test, There were some concerns about that test that I will share, and based on those concerns, we were charged with doing an assessment so that we could make a recommendation about what is the best test for K-12 music education licensure. So we looked at a series of questions as part of our process. We looked at the test 5114. We considered what barriers that assessment might present, and we looked at other options, and within those options, what were the pass rates of those assessments, and we had some conversation around the distinction between the purpose of a content assessment and the music ed TPA. And if the purpose of the music ed TPA is to assess pedagogical knowledge, then the content assessment should assess music content knowledge in as pure a form as possible, so that we are doing our due diligence and making sure that candidates for music licensure have adequate content knowledge to teach that subject. So we conducted a music test review. We did this by convening a committee of music educators from across the state. And I want to stress the variety and diversity of the folks that we convened. You can kind of take a look down the list there and see that they come from across the state. They come from K-12 institutions as well as post-secondary institutions. They come from different types of schools, and they represent different associations within the state of North Carolina. We wanted to make sure that we had the right voices at the table, and this group of folks met several times in order to make sure that they were able to do a good job in reviewing the music tests that are available. And we thank them for their time and for their service. We basically asked the committee to take a look at 3 questions. We asked them to consider what content needed to be addressed, which of the tests best assess or most closely aligned with that content, and therefore what was the recommendation. And when we go through the tests, we also looked at a couple of additional factors. So we looked at what was the content that we wanted to see assessed in the content assessment, and those content areas are listed on the screen. And please note that pedagogy is not one of those content areas. We wanted to make sure that we were looking at their knowledge of basic music theory, history, technology, etc., so that we were really making sure that they knew their music stuff. For this slide, the title is actually a little bit misleading. We really looked at that second question: does the test adequately assess a candidate's comprehensive music knowledge? And we were concerned about the constructed responses in the current state assessment because of their focus on pedagogy and not necessarily on the content knowledge. We were also concerned about the duration of the test and making sure that we were not asking students to take tests that were inordinately long when a shorter assessment that was able to adequately assess their content knowledge was sufficient. So we looked at 7 tests that are nationally normed and evaluated. You can see those on the screen. Praxis 5114 is the current state test. Praxis 5113 is the past immediate assessment, the one that we used most, like we used that one previously. And we took a close look at the Pearson NT 504 music. The other 4 tests on the screen, 5115, 5116, and the other 2 Pearson tests, are very content specific. They do things like assess vocal performance specifically or instrumental performance specifically. So they did not qualify as a comprehensive assessment for a general content knowledge for K-12 music. So they took themselves out of the running because they were not comprehensive assessments. So we took a look at those three, and I'm going to walk you through each of those three. The first one is the current state test, which is the Praxis 5114. It has a duration of 2 hours. It is mostly multiple choice, but it has those three constructed responses. It has somewhere between 25 and 35% of the assessment is actually based on instructional or pedagogical knowledge. And you can see the pass rates there are at 62%. The state pass rate is about 44%, and the cost is $156. So that was kind of our baseline. This is what we currently have and what we currently use. So we have that 25 to 35% pedagogy, a state pass rate of 44%, and a cost of $156. Based on our evaluation of other assessments, the Praxis 5114 is not recommended. We took a close look at 5113, which was the former music content test. It's a shorter test. It's only 2 hours, and it is all multiple choice. However, it can have up to a maximum of 47% that is based on pedagogy, technology, and professional issues. The multiple choice is completely randomized. And so a test that maxes out the randomization could end up with a maximum of 47% within those areas that we deemed were not what we wanted the content assessment to evaluate. The national pass rate is 82%, so it has a higher passage rate than the 5114, and the cost is $130, so it does cost less. But this one had a very high percentage maximum of pedagogy. So therefore, also not recommended. We looked at the Pearson NT504 music. Has a duration of 3 hours. It's all multiple choice, no constructed response. It has an even distribution of the content areas, slightly weighted to music methodology and performance, but that's still content knowledge and not pedagogy. So that still fits within assessing a candidate's content knowledge within general music. The national pass rate is 87%. And this test has the highest N of the Pearson music tests. So we looked at the fact that there were the multiple Pearson tests. This one has the most students who take it, and it has a very effective passage rate of 87%. The cost is $119, so it is also the most cost effective. So this particular assessment had the best fit in terms of content. It had the highest passage rate. It has the lowest cost. So in the Goldilocks and Three Bears analogy, this one is the one that wins. This is the Goldilocks. So the licensure subcommittee's recommendation is to phase out the utilization of Praxis 5114 as the content examination for K-12 music licensure, and to adopt and phase in the requirement of the Pearson NT504 music as the content examination for K-12 music licensure. Before we open it up for discussion, there's one more piece that I would be remiss if we didn't address, and that's on the next slide. As the subcommittee was meeting and as the committee met, there were several additional questions about music licensure that came up that were outside of the scope of what the subcommittee was asked to consider, but I would like to lift those into the space for perhaps potential future consideration. There are states who do vocal performance licensure separate from instrumental performance licensure, separate from a general K-12 music licensure. So there might be implications that we might want to consider more specific music licensure in order to make sure that what we are asking our educators to do is in alignment with what their preparation actually is. And then the last question, what music specific instruction is currently addressed in our EPPs? So there were some concerns raised from the field about students who go through EPPs and they're getting general pedagogical instruction, but not necessarily music specific instruction that would help them be able to go into and, for example, teach a student who wanted to play a woodwind instrument how best to use a reed. So they may not be getting that level of pedagogical or very specific music content instruction, and there might be a need for us to look at the alignment of those types of skills. So at this point, Kim, I would ask for you please to go back one slide, and then I will turn things back over to Dr. Bullock.
This was an excellent report, and the due diligence has been done by this committee. We will not vote on this today, but I think this has been very clear, but I will open it up for questions for the subcommittee.
We also have Mr. Rader here, so just so everybody knows that if there were music specific questions, he could also help address.
Wonderful. Any questions?
I have a question. I'm always full of questions. I'm sorry. But so I'm not in the first, thank you for all the careful, detailed, amazing work and for helping us think about, the content you need to teach and the pedagogy you need to teach. So I really appreciate all the work of the committee. I'm not in the music space, so my question will come as I try to draw a parallel to my space, which is I'm a math teacher, right? And in math, we have something that we call content knowledge for teaching, which is content knowledge is not pedagogy, but it's the way in which we need teachers to know their content so that they can best address their content in the classroom space. And I'm wondering if these tests include things that, if there is such concept in music as music content knowledge for teaching, whether this test addresses some of those components of teachers' content knowledge.
So I'm not 100%. I would actually defer to Mr. Rader for that to see if he actually can answer that question, because I'm not a music teacher either.
Sure, no problem. So we have a variety of discipline-specific pedagogies and approaches that I think are completely in line with what you're asking about. And so, for example, there are three major ways to approach teaching general music in the classroom. One is ORF, the other is Kadai, and the other is escapes me right now. But so we each of those are separate approaches and methodologies and ways that are specifically uh, implemented in order to teach or to instruct young people how to develop their musical skills. And those sorts of questions are asked about in these tests. And so we actually are trying to, those were the sorts of things that we actually were trying to minimize because somebody, especially who might have a background in band, might not be learning about those elementary specific pedagogies, vice versa. And somebody who has a music production degree or music theory or music composition degree and is in a lateral entry or sorry, residency licensure program and is taking a generic EPP and is trying to take this in order to prepare to go into the classroom might not have those backgrounds either yet. And so that's where those future considerations came up.
Thank you for clarifying. Again, in my world of math, I am not talking pedagogy, I am talking content. And so to give a quick example, if I give you, I'm an elementary person, if I give you a subtraction problem, solving that problem, that's a math content. But if a student makes a mistake, I have to be able to make a content analysis of that mistake. It's not pedagogy. It's how I'm thinking about the math, because as a teacher, I have to be able to say, well, that mistake leads to a non-generalizable mathematical solution that later will create program when, when you move from whole numbers to integers, there will be a problem there. It's really a mathematical type of thinking, not pedagogy. So anyway, that's the type of content I do hope that every teacher has, right? Solving the subtraction problem in my world, absolutely, you have to do that. But teachers need to know more content than or know it differently. An engineer knows mathematics different than a physicist or a teacher. Anyway, that is the kind of content knowledge that in my world we would like to see assessed. It's not pedagogy, it's content.
So I think the analogy there would be music theory and Schenkerian analysis and being able to understand the underlying chord structures and tonal relationships between different parts, and the fact that, if these two lines are dissonant to one another, that means that they become more difficult to pitch center. And what do you do in order to develop students' aural inner hearing to be able to pitch center or adjust their mouth shape or whatever it is in order to have a consonant sonority. And so I think that all of those things fall under what is categorically called music theory in these tests.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Oh, that's a really good question. So thank you for bringing that forward, because when we think about it, how does it fit with what we know in other disciplines, right? Is it following the same process? All right, other questions? Kim Evans, would you please move to the last slide again, the ones that are, yeah. I think this residency question is really interesting, the last one. I'd be curious to know the answer to that across the state. So that might be that wouldn't be us, but that would be very much from DPI asking that information from programs. Anybody else have thoughts on that? Okay. All right. Well, thank you again to the committee. So if you could think about this, and if you want to investigate this test or this assessment from Pearson, if you want to talk to people in your world about it, then bring that information back. That would be really, really good. Remember that this was brought up because it came from the field in the spring, and asked us to consider this and also the pass rate of the current test is very, very low and lower than other licensure tests. I'll say that generally. So that's been a concern. So, all right. Thank you all. All right. Okay, so before we adjourn today, I'd like to thank Rachel, who was our 2025-2026 North Carolina Teacher of the Year, for her service on Pepsi. Thank you, Rachel. And I would like to welcome Case and Justice, who just sat through a whole meeting and got to vote and everything, and we hadn't even welcomed him. So welcome, Kaysen. Kaysen's a history teacher at Swansboro High School in Onslow County, and he's been teaching for 13 years. So you did really well for your first meeting, Kaysen. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's easy when you work with good people, right? It's easy.
We try very hard. Are you in school already, or are you in work days?
So it's funny now, the kids are just here for like freshman orientation. So all around me, like behind me, that's what the kids are doing. So it's definitely started back up here.
Very good. Well, we welcome you and we thank you for your service on Pepsi and congratulations on being the 26-27 North Carolina Teacher of the Year.
Thank you very much.
Big honor. Okay, we have now completed our meeting, and unless there's additional business at this time, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Connie.
Thank you, Connie.
I can second, Paola.
Thank you, Paula. Second. All right, Ms. Edwards, let's call for the vote to adjourn.
Dr. Blanton,
Approve.
Dr. Bullock,
Approve.
Dr. Fleming,
Approved.
Ms. Edwards, approve. Dr. Locklear,
Approve.
Dr. Groves Price,
Approve.
Mr. Justice,
Approve.
Ms. Hoskins,
Approve.
Dr. Weddington,
Approved.
Dr. Griffin,
Approve.
Dr. Winter,
Approved.
Mr. Probst,
Approve.
and Dr. Stein.
Approved.
The motion carries.
All right. Everyone have a great rest of the day and a great beginning of school. And we'll see you next month. Take care.
Madam Chair and
Yes, sir.
Mr. Vice Chair, we've sent you another link.
All right. See you in a minute. Thank
you.
you all.
And I have a question for you at some point.
Okay. Do you want to ask me now? I think,
Yeah, that's fine. Are we still
I don't
live?
know. I think we're still live streaming. I'll put my, hang on. I'll put my mobile number in the chat.
I think I have it.
You have it?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Just call me in a
I'll
bit.
shoot you a